Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 30th of August. Well, yesterday, strong move off of the little breakout above the 23%. And this was that magenta staying above yellow, even though you had the somewhat negative bias with the MBI white lead. We had that strong DOC conversion here where midterm buyers had crossed over. That was enough to get it over the support. And still having enough short activity that created a nice little short recovery move all the way back up to the 50% on a pretty strong read from that standpoint, and shakeout moving into the positive territory, positive extreme. So yeah, we can look for that to get refilled once the sell signal comes in. But it was pretty strong turnaround, and I think it was broad based across everything. Was moving higher, and that's always an interesting one because um, that's significant an allocation with nothing positive from a news standpoint. Um, I think that we got to see some interesting involvement. I don't want to say, central bank moves or whatever, but when we look at what happened with treasuries, currency, it's an interesting cross-play, across quite a few asset classes there. So from an NQ standpoint, uh, bouncing pretty strong right there, and you can see the magenta lead is pretty decent, but again, positive extreme. So um, it just caught a bunch of people going the wrong direction and really forced them. Interestingly enough, big push into treasuries, reducing the yield significantly. So money still seeking safety at this particular stage, and it moves treasuries right into the range that I think is more suitable. I think we get a little bit of extreme, just as we got the big extremes to the other side of it, with the Fed not having changed anything. And we'll see if there's a sustained belief that that maybe the Fed will soften despite their rhetoric, but we're not seeing that. We are seeing, though, the activity on the back end of things with the liquidity and the overnight treasury capabilities for member banks and that, but um, it's still not the outward policy. From an oil standpoint, though, problematic, and so you had the push for everything else, but there's also a push towards inflation, which is not going to change the Fed's position at all, unless it significantly impacts the economic outlook. And the euro making a strong pushback had the MBI magenta just slightly over, and it created the nice dip there. Relief rally, probably, but more likely not a strong defense of the euro at this particular stage, because as we talked about, below these levels it starts to get precarious, so they have to kind of push against the short move and try and push things back up just to keep it from getting ugly, so to speak. And from a gold standpoint, that steady rise, pretty decent. Little extreme, fading off a little bit, but as long as it stays above that MDI weight and can maintain above 33, or at least a minimum above the 25, would be sustainable. This was expected with what we've been seeing from oil, so it's just lagging a little bit to what oil's doing. But you had a strong turnaround from Bitcoin coming off the oversold conditions relatively, but it was a pretty strong move from a DOC standpoint, and pretty significant pop from the shakeout. Very close to positive extremes, not quite in that segment, but it was enough to any new short activity was just sort of upended. And these are the kind of moves we expect from Bitcoin, and then when they get these dramatic moves, sustainable at this particular stage. Yeah, with the magenta leading and everything, with the DOC congruent in that, but how much more significant? We'll be able to see that in time, but it looks more like just a relief rally at this particular stage. The ETH has been stronger from its reading, but not really producing a whole lot of anything. So it was a significant turnaround. More likely than not, what you get is the pop from this, a fade back. The question will be how much the fade back is going to be. If we get a full fade back, that could be more problematic, but it'll do a lot of repair from the DOC. We were in that automatic turnaround zone anyway from this setup, and that's exactly what it did. There was a much stronger performance than I would have expected, a little bit more modest from the moves. Of course, MBI program's buying all that, and nice move from a 50K. It was all pretty clean there. Once it took over the white MBI at that particular stage, boom, it was off to the races. And we pretty much stayed above the 76% this whole way through. So that was pretty congruent when you look at that strong DOC with the green staying above red and red continuing to rise. Pretty extreme right there, but you can see DOC steel at this particular stage being under the negative 13 is a little bit of softness, but the reality is that's a complete reset and gives it the full opportunity to push back up even under any pressure in shorts. Didn't really cave, it's just stayed pretty consistent. And you can see from a positive extreme standpoint, that would take you all the way back to the 44, 46 range. When the turnaround comes, you can see with the nice rising gold, which really helped maintain that. From an intraday standpoint, what it really looked like was the start of pre-market buying, and that just was relentless. And so you created these series of positive extreme setups, came all the way across through there, and in the post-market, getting a little bit of softness, filling back a little bit of it, nothing excessive, but just taking away any tighter stops at this particular stage. So that's the long and the short of it for now, and it was a pretty decent move. See if it's able to be maintained. Still suspect, but the reality is when you get enough people wrong side of a direction, or at least strongly believing that things were going to continue to fade, it was a perfect opportunity to strike against them. Question is, we'll be looking to see how much new short activity takes place within the move, simply to take advantage of any weaknesses from a bull side if they've faded, or if it was just an attempt to create a short cover rally, and how much more of that will really push things through remains to be seen at this particular stage. I think we're still in quite a bit of flux. A lot of the numbers for unemployment, things like that have been readjusted were not so good. So the idea that maybe there's some weakness and the Fed will have to back off a little bit certainly would be an impetus for market making the upside move. As always, though, continue to update you with relevant charts on the Skype chat. Have a good one. Trade well.